An odd episode, this one. Well, you'll see for yourself in a minute. And as much as I usually don't specifically do it, I talk about one game that I believe is not worth playing at all. So, grab a drink, sit comfortably, and let's see what I've prepared for today. Global Conquest is a top-down turn-based strategy, conquest and exploration game. And while it may not be one for you to play for years on end, it's definitely good and fun enough to keep you engaged for the few weeks that you'll give it. In simplest possible terms, it's a world domination board game taking place on an unexplored planet. The goal is that simple too, to conquer the planet before any of your CPU or online human-controlled opponents do. To achieve that goal, you have to utilize many of the available military units, from land-based infantry through submarines, battleships, all the way to the aircraft carriers and a few others. Using these, you must mount your offensive smart enough to grab as much terrain as possible while keeping yours safe in the same time, especially your so-called ComCen, which obviously stands for Command Center, because if it goes down at any point, it's game over. So, while you may be bleeding units and terrain left and right if something goes astray, losing battles one after another, and nothing will happen really. Well, other than your honor as the best strategist out there being stained, that is. Losing ComCen is like losing a king at chess. It's a failure, is what I'm saying. Each turn will see you engage in various activities other than the warfare too, stuff like managing your country, in particular economy of its cities, diplomatic relations, treaties and alliances with others, and even espionage or various random events. These random events are picked by pulling cards, which are available every 5 or so turns. They come from a very deep pool of different situations to tackle. Some may be seemingly innocent, stuff like Pope visits, others are battle fatigues, plague or drought, or even taxpayer revolts, and various other happenings, good or bad. Global Conquest is an interesting take on a global wargame, and if you don't mind it being a bit simplified in terms of the number of different kinds of units and a very basic board game style of gameplay, then there's a lot you will find in it to love. Graphics, while high-res, are EGA only, and sound design is rather basic too, so it doesn't present itself to be particularly attractive. That said, it's a strategy board game first and foremost, so it doesn't really need flashy looks or orchestral soundtrack either, and it's good enough for it to be competent in its gameplay design only. If you like board games, you're gonna have a great time with Global Conquest, I'm sure of it. Saying that Flaotris is a Tetris clone would not only be a gross oversimplification, but also a disservice to the game itself. Why? Because you don't just play a variant of the game here, you play 8 of them, all at the same time. No, your ears did not deceive you, I did say 8. But if that sounds like something you've not seen or expected, hold on to your wigs, fake mustaches and chairs, cause there's more. The blocks don't fall down, but rather float upwards. I know, it's unheard of, but yeah, that's still not all. There are also a few new previously unseen in Tetris' clone shapes, and you carry on playing until all 8 playing fields are overfilled. So, losing in one does not end the game, you've still 7 to fight for points in. You switch between all 8 playing fields, keeping all of them under control, and while it may seem easy initially, same as in Classic, sooner or later the game will become hectic and you'll find yourself panicking, switching between the boards, desperately trying to control more than you can handle. Naturally, other than the few aforementioned novelties, the staple Tetris formula still applies here, so you need to create horizontal lines of blocks to clear them off the screen. Each of the playing fields has their own queue of upcoming blocks and shows the next 2 that will appear, allowing you to strategize and prepare for what's to come. I think that Flaotris is one of the most ingenious and fun takes on the classic, and a lot of fun, even if you're panicking half of it, desperately trying to hold your liquids in while playing. Flaotris is perhaps not as good as Tetris 99 that Nintendo premiered a few years ago, but probably close second, in terms of innovation to the formula, that is. I could say here that the Flaotris' presentation is quite nice too, using VGA graphics, but honestly, it's nothing special. Cause while it does display plenty of colors and gradient on the background, it's just blocks, you know. Nothing else, just small colorful squares, so hardly anything worth mentioning. One way or another, Flaotris is one of the more creative takes on Tetris, and if you enjoyed the original, you'll love this one too. The so-called Varginha Incident was a series of events in 1996 when residents of Varginha, a city in Brazil, claimed to have seen various extraterrestrial creatures and crafts over a span of a day, and that the Brazilian government managed to capture at least one of the creatures. While it may have never happened, including supposed human impregnation by the alien, which is another separate bag of odd claims to unpack, it was an excellent base for the movie, book or a game. and at least one of the three we've got in the end, the game. So, the Varginha Incident, aka Alien Anarchy, was born, and it's a sci-fi first-person shooter taking place on a location in 1996. According to the game's story, some of the aliens escaped and hid in the city, and you're somehow given a special mission by them. Yes, them, as in the aliens. You need to find and recover their captured ship. So you're taking a side of aliens in this one, which as I understand is a new one for you, usually fighting against them to save us. But I know that you're up for the task and that I can count on you not failing.
I'm Batman.
Okie dokie, Batty Buddy. Good news, everyone. Bruce said that if you happen to fail, he will come and rescue you. So, there's that at least going for you. Anyway, on your mission you'll need to face the Brazilian military, try to rescue captured aliens and recover their spaceship. And as you go through the game and story will unfold, you'll learn that there's an underground city of Stone Drum in Brazil, and it's where humans and aliens supposedly work in unison. Why and what are they working on there? Well, that's something for you to discover while playing. And you'll have a lot of time for doing so, visiting various real-life locations like Rio de Janeiro or Sao Paulo to name a few. Alien Anarchy's FPS combat is not the best I've seen, and definitely could use some polish. But it's not unplayable or broken in any way. Perhaps the enemies could be more varied and less bullet spongy, but other than that, it's a standard fare for the genre. One thing that's definitely lacking is number of available weapons, as you only get 4. And while it could be argued that the standard army armament would only use few guns in real life too, it does leave you wanting a bit more. The Varginha Incident is a box standard shooter, and it doesn't really do anything better than the genre average did by 1996. It's no better or worse than games that came out then. Thing is, it dropped in 1998, when we had Quake and few other full 3D games out already. And another 2.5D one was not really something that the market was hungry for, and as such, it easily found itself on this list. Goal 94 came out in, well, 1994, and was the last outing in the series of text-based football/soccer management games, and the best one of them all to boot. Now, let me make one thing clear. Championship Manager, Ultimate Soccer Manager or Premier Manager, it is not. It's a simple text-based international soccer manager in which you compete to win either Custom Continental Cup or the World Cup. And to do so, you'll be responsible for any and all tasks in your chosen country's team. You'll select squads, prepare and choose tactics, and, well, play matches. You will not deal with stuff like stadium expansions, deep scouting or advertising. So if you enjoy these in other games in the genre, keep in mind that it's not here in any shape or form. Goal 94 is the first game in the series that allows for substituting of keepers, which may seem like a no-brainer, but earlier ones omitted it entirely. All matches are text-based, and what I mean by that is that they're also presented in text mode, but using custom ASCII characters and provide a running commentary all throughout too. The commentary can even be printed out later on if you'd like to relive your successes and losses, or just want to learn what worked and what didn't during a particular game. It may seem like an odd thing to say about some ASCII characters running on the screen chaotically, but the games are actually pretty exciting and fun to watch, especially that they're better paced than previously and more streamlined. Players are described with more detail and easier to read stats than in previous games, and the new by 1994 World Cup rules have also been implemented. Every season some players will end their careers and some new ones will join your B team, hoping to eventually find their way into your primary squad. Who is Goal 94 for if by 1994 there were other, arguably more feature-rich, better-looking and playing management games available? Well, it's difficult to answer really. It's for someone who loves the genre and wants to try all of the games in it out, for someone who's tired of overcomplicated or too convoluted games trying to do way too many things at once and failing at the most important one of them all, enjoyment. Or for someone whose PC was really outdated by 1994 and still wanted to experience a fun and deep management game running on their potatoes at a reasonable pace. Gold Rush is a late 80s Sierra's adventure game, and as such it uses their in-house text parser. As these go, Sierra had a decent one, but even despite that, if you're not new to this channel, you know that I don't dig games made using parsers. Cause I'm not a fan of the control scheme and hate parsers with a passion of a million lemmings dying, jumping off of cliff into depths of a bottomless canyon. But I'll try to stay objective here and won't let my feelings for the gameplay mechanic to influence what I'll say about it too much. I will just a little though. Story-wise, years ago your brother secretly ran away to Sacramento, California, saying nothing to anyone, escaping accusations and conviction for a crime he didn't commit. A story for the ages, it seems. Now, he contacted you out of the blue, asking you to come over and join him in getting immensely rich by prospecting gold. And since the letter has a gold nugget attached to it, it's definitely not a fool's errand. So, you decide to do just that. Abandon your old life entirely, sell all your belongings, move west, find your brother, and strike gold. Interestingly enough, the game gave you few choices when it comes to how you could get to Sacramento. You could take a stagecoach, which was the cheapest transport method and the only one always available. Alternatively, you could take a ship to Panama, where you'd need to cross swamps and jungles on foot to get to the port from which you could catch another ship, this time a direct one to Sacramento. And finally, you could also take a trip around the Cape Horn, the longest of them all. Each of the travel methods takes different time to reach the destination, each poses different challenges and random events, making Gold Rush actually a very replayable title. When you finally reach Sacramento, all the routes converge and the rest of the game is identical, regardless how you got there. In California, you'll be searching for your long-lost brother, prospecting for gold, avoiding bandits and having fun dodging hundreds of possible and lurking behind every corner deaths. And yeah, it's a Sierra game, so you can bet your ass that there's death everywhere. So, saving often, preferably having few of those saves running at once, is a must. Gold Rush is an interesting game cause it has everything I like in an adventure, so captivating story, multiple paths of gameplay, Wild West setting and playability. And all that is ruined by the text parser. That said, the Steam re-release in a form of gold version allows for switching to point-click mode, so if you plan on trying the game out, that's how I suggest you do it. Yardage is like brutal sports football or Blood Bowl, just years earlier and not as good. It's a variation on American football with monsters, elves and wizards mixed in for good measure. Oh, and the ball is not a ball at all, but an eyeball with legs. I know what you're thinking. Perfect. And it is, well-fitting style-wise at least. And if you're gonna play as monsters, the ball's gotta fit the bill, right? Same as in any other football game, points are naturally scored by carrying the ball, the eye I mean, across the field or by kicking the shit out of your opponents. No? Wait, the latter is not in football's rulebook, I think. Is there even such a thing as a rulebook for it? Whatever. Even if it's not there, it's what the best about Yardage: violence. Each of the players is different and all have different characteristics describing them, and directly influencing the situation on the pitch. So, some may be faster but less resistant to damage, while others may be slower but walking tanks. Same way, some may be able to deliver efficient killing blows, while others may be resistant to them, to a degree at least. When deciding on a squad for a game from your roster of players, you can always decide who'll make it, picking them player by player or by choosing one of the few pre-made selections optimized by strength or stamina, for instance. Despite the omnipresent violence, there are actually various plays in the playbook that you can try to carry out, and you can even edit some of your own. There are also different fields that you'll get to play on, and they differ in features, making a match on each feel distinctively unique. Gameplay-wise, Yardage is very similar to the game it's based on, so American football, meaning that the flow is interrupted quite often. Especially that there's only 4 players per side and interruptions happen after each beatdown too. So it feels at times as if the match was progressing much slower than it actually is. All because you keep loading in between each of them. And while it's not a game-breaking issue, it's definitely annoying. The graphics are not great, but aren't terrible either. They're the dead center average that the EGA could offer in 1989. Sounds are. Yep, that's all about them. Overall, presentation is a bit disappointing, even if not bad per se. Oh, and did I mention scrolling? I didn't? Good, cause there isn't any. The game switches screens in predefined points and it's as confusing as you can imagine it to be in a sports title. Especially that the quote-unquote action can happen off-screen too. So, let's say you're running with a ball, excuse me, and you have no idea what's happening where you're not seeing. And it's precisely where 2 of the opponents may be giving their best to one of your teammates, showing him why having a straight nose and all teeth is not a perk whatsoever. Yardage can be fun, but it can also be really, really annoying. So I'm not gonna advise you on it. If you're curious, try it out and then decide if it's something you could enjoy for longer play sessions. Goody is a very early Spanish side-view flip-screen arcade platformer. Other than those, it also released on various 8-bit systems, and apart from Spectrum, it looks better on all of them than it does on PC, which I don't have to tell you is hella disappointing. But since it only uses CGA display, it's hardly something unexpected or surprising. You play as Goody, name and another character trait, a bank robber, and you plan heist of your life on the biggest bank in Spain. To do so, however, you need appropriate tools, which you will also need to find and secure. Goody plays like a mixture of Jet Set Willy and Dizzy, as aside from platforming, it also features some very light adventuring elements. So, first of all, you'll set off to secure blowtorch, pincers, hammer and a screwdriver, and then get to the bank. Naturally, on your way, all manner of enemies and hazards will try to stop you. Anything from policemen through gorillas, because why the hell not, I mean gorillas in the middle of a sprawling Spanish city is nothing out of ordinary. Then there are Kung Fu fighters, street sweepers, all the way to paper planes. And while I can sorta understand all the people being against you, after all they keep their money in a bank, I don't know how they know what and when you plan to do, and for the life of me I have no clue what paper planes in particular have against you. Unless you're one of the robbers that posts selfies on Insta first and then heads on his mission. But given that in 1987, so when the game came out, the closest thing to Insta we had were photo albums, it's highly unlikely. Anyway, when you finally reach the bank, you'll need to get to the vault and then perform robbery typing in the correct vault code. Underneath the bank, in the tunnels, same as outside of it, there are numerous enemies that will try to get you. These, however, are mostly rats, snakes, fish and droplets of water. Yes, water. As weird as outside of it, but beware of them anyway. Goody feels like an 8-bit game, which kinda explains why it had so many ports to the smaller systems and why it looks the way it does. But if I'm to be honest, if I was to play it today, I'd go for any other platform than DOS. So, should you play it though? It's actually worth checking out if you like classic platformers, but I'd suggest going for a different version if possible. GT Racing 97 is a pretty fun arcade racer. While it may not be as good as Screamer 2 or the Need for Speed, and was largely ignored by most gamers because of the two classics, it's good enough to stand on its own and provide quite a few hours of fun. Especially that similarly to Screamer, it features a split-screen 2-player mode, which may need a bit beefier machine than single player, but if your PC could handle it back then, it no doubt was a fun time. And trust me, compared to the earlier two, GT Racing 97 had very reasonable hardware requirements. The game features 9 cars to choose from, and while they're sporting stupid sounding names like Cougar, Terminator or Blue Blood to name a few, a keen eye will quickly pick up on what they actually are, and find their favorite Porsche 911, Lamborghini Diablo or Ferrari Testarossa among them. All of them naturally differ in how they handle, but the top speed seems to be for the most part very similar and somewhere around 300 kph. The tracks come from 8 countries and are divided into 3 continents. Only Canada and Brazil are available at start though, and you'll need to unlock the others by beating the championships that consist of number of races in different countries. There are 3 difficulty levels to choose from, but you should never go for the lowest, as I consider it more of a tutorial than a real choice. The races don't try to overtake each other at all, there's no traffic whatsoever, and the maximum speed of all cars is severely limited. The other 2 modes are all fine and work well, though as per usual playing against a friend is the most fun. Interestingly enough, there are 3 kinds of damage in the game, all indicated separately as body, engine and wheels. So while GTA Racing 97 is definitely not a simulator, it does not allow for an all-out crazy maneuvers, and you have to keep all 3 parameters in check during all races. Presentation-wise, GT is decent. The graphics are colorful, roadside decorations are a mix of 2D and 3D objects, and the feeling of speed is definitely there, so there is nothing to complain about in the looks department. Sounds are a bit meh, the cars seem to make tad weird noises, but not to the point of being annoying or distracting. They're just not what you expect them to be, at least to me. To summarize, there's really nothing special about GT Racing 97. It's a good, a bit above average racer that is quite fun, and if you don't have access to bigger and better games in the genre, you will not be disappointed with it either. First and foremost, look at this. Now, isn't it an epic box cover? It looks like James Bond movie poster. And not one of these where the villain has a funky mustache, black cat and a golden tooth, but like one where he's an evil super genius and Bond will have incredibly tough time beating him. Also, sci-fi and spaceships. Yep, that's always fun. The cover promised a lot, and seeing box like that in a game shop made it an instant purchase. I guess, cause in 1991 I was still getting my games in a very questionable way. Golden Eagle is a side-view flick-screen action platformer with a lot of mostly optional puzzling. You play as a hero, which shouldn't come as a surprise cause you are one in real life too, and you're sent to recover a statuette of a golden eagle, an artifact of mysterious powers stolen by evil sect led by even more evil priest Namur. He, and it's not a joke, split the statue into 5 pieces and hid them all over the city. If you're wondering why he'd done it, why he split it and went around the whole town looking for potential stashing locations just to drop the pieces in them, wonder no more. I did too, and came to one conclusion, and it's… drumroll please Bruce? Game logic. I mean, if they weren't split, or if the priest was to use the artifact's power against our hero, we'd had no game to play. So, most of your time you'll spend walking around the levels, shooting at the enemies and solving very basic environmental puzzles, mainly focused on finding items and then using them in the right spot, or toggling switches to deactivate the security systems, kinda like you did in Impossible Mission 2. There are also saves that can and should be opened, either by using codes or appropriate safe cracking equipment, all to find and pick up Golden Eagle pieces. Oh, and there's a full minigame of Reversi incorporated into Golden Eagle's game world. It can be accessed through numerous terminals and is actually pretty good in terms of AI that it uses to play against you, better than it was in many earlier standalone titles. They're entirely optional though, and while reverse is fun once in a while, you may actually decide to never touch it in the game and lose nothing from gameplay or story. Golden Eagle is beautiful, and while the levels are extremely samey, often barely distinguishable one from another, the animations of our protagonists are excellent, nearly as good as those in Flashback or Prince of Persia were. But what these two titles had and Golden Eagle does not is sense of discovery, fun and addictive gameplay loop, and a feeling of anticipation of getting to find something new and cool. Don't get me wrong, Golden Eagle is not a bad game, especially that its story that gradually unfolds is pretty cool, but the repetitiveness of levels and gameplay mechanics reduce it to an average title at most, and is probably why it's a perfect fit for this video. Guardians 2, same as Golden Eagle, was made by Lorisiel, and while it's an entirely different game in a completely different genre, it shares something other than the developer with it. Namely, it too is quite average quality and gameplay wise. It's an unusual top-down puzzler that's a mixture of Tetris and Origamo. Origamo coincidentally being another of those obscure games that I think I should cover sooner or later. Anyway, in Lorisiel's style, Guardians are a little bit confusing, all over the place, and take a long while to get used to and even longer to learn. The idea here is to join blocks of the same color to remove them. But gameplay doesn't take place on a freeform empty field like in Tetris, but rather sorta checkered board with various holes and obstacles on it. And you have to constantly keep those in mind while placing blocks. It convolutes the original's formula a lot and makes it more cumbersome and annoying than fun. Even more so, cause you'll need to constantly rotate them to find the right pattern to fit them on the board. It's definitely a game for a hardcore Tetris masters, rather than people such as myself who like an occasional round of Tetris but don't look for it to be any more challenging than it already is. The fact that the viewpoint is top-down too don't make it any easier either. In short, to summarize, you have to group blocks like in Tetris, all the while making sure that they don't pile up, and you better do it fast, cause also like in Tetris, the game doesn't wait for you at any point. But there are also numerous layers that you don't see, so you need to uncover them by removing those that you do. It's incredibly annoying to play, to the point that honestly I'd rather not. So, unless you're in a slightly masochistic mood, I'd suggest going for either of the two games this one's based on, or just ignoring it completely, as unless you have a big, swollen, wrinkled mega brain or enjoy being pissed constantly, it will take a long while, not only to grasp its mechanics, but even learn how to play it semi-efficiently. I say, skip it. So, aside from that weird Guardians game which I deem totally unplayable, what do you think of the rest? Or perhaps maybe you've even played Guardians and liked it. If you did, how long did it take you to master it? And also, how fast is your brain crunching on incoming data? Perhaps you should be a subject in some lab where they'll breed new kind of super intelligent beings. A Homo superior. Or maybe connected to a supercomputer of sorts serving as a singular GPU cluster used for AI calculations. Whichever the case, let me know in the comments below. If you liked the video, hit those like and subscribe buttons below. Smash them if you have to, it helps more than you could ever know. Also, I would like to thank you and all my amazing Patreon and YouTube members for helping this channel keep going. And last but definitely not least, I would like to thank all the wonderful folks who record and upload playthroughs, let's plays and other retro-centric videos here on YouTube, because they help to preserve the games that would have otherwise be long forgotten. So thank you.